Hello friends, once again welcome back. This is the third part of the video. In this part of video, I will explain complete lesson in the form of different resources. Alright, I will use video resources, some picture and image resources so that there will be no any confusion with the topics given in the textbook. Alright, as we know that we all have seen the different things. Alright, the different things like the first of all we have seen about the Vedas, alright, then the types of Vedas, okay, as well as we have seen the historians how did they study Rig Veda, we have seen the cattle, horses and chariots, we have seen about the different political life of that time, the different words to describe the people, alright, the way the people used to describe that time. Then we have seen the story of megaliths, the burials that found there and the differences in the social differences in the burial, as well as we have seen about the most importantly the site of Inamgaon and what is the difference between the burials of megaliths and Inamgaon. And now let us understand, and also we have seen the occupations of Inamgaon, and in this way these were things were happening in India at that time 3500 years ago. So what was happening in China, that also we have understood. So now it is time to understand about all those covered topics in a different manner so that there will be no any confusion you people will be having. Alright, let us move ahead. So let us understand and watch this video.
What books and burials tell us? One of the oldest books in the world. There are 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda, with Rig Veda being the oldest and composed about 3500 years.
Yes, these are the 4 Vedas explained here. Alright, and Vedas are the oldest books. The Rig Veda is the oldest one, which were composed about 3500 years
ago. The Rig Veda comprises of more than 1,000 hymns, which are called Sukta, meaning well said.
Yes, it contains hymns, and hymns means suktas. Suktas means well said, and it were all those were written in the praising of the gods and different gods, god of fire, Indra, the god of warrior god, and even Soma. Watch it carefully.
These hymns are written in praise of various gods and goddesses, with Agni, the god of fire, Indra, a warrior god, and Soma, a plant from which a special drink was prepared, being the important ones. These hymns were composed by sages and taught by priests to students with great care. Men composed, learnt, and taught most of the hymns, but a few were composed by women as well. The Rig Veda is written in Old Vedic Sanskrit, and other languages. Indo-European is a name given to a family of languages, of which Sanskrit is a part. Languages like Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri, and many European languages like English, French, German, Greek, Italian, and Spanish belong to this family. They have words in common and are hence called a family. For example, the word matra in Sanskrit, ma in Hindi, and mother in English seem to be.
That is what it is called, a mother of language, means family of language. Alright, that's what we need to understand here. What is the language, language family? Alright, this is called the family of languages. It is because actually Indo-European, some Indian languages such as the language mentioned here, Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri, Sindhi, as well as many European languages, and they be combined, they make the Hindi, the family of language. Alright, Sanskrit, if we call matra, in Hindi it's called ma, in English mother.
Similar. Some other languages spoken in the subcontinent belong to different families. For example, languages spoken in the northeast belong to Tibeto-Burman family. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam belong to the Dravidian family.
Yes.
Languages spoken in Jharkhand and central India belong to the Austroasiatic family. How historians study Rigveda. Historians, like archaeologists, study the past by examining written sources in addition to material remains. The Rigveda is one such written source that the historians examine. Here is an example of a dialogue found in Rigveda between a sage named Vishwamitra and two rivers, Bias and Satluj.
See, this is the way historians have studied the Rig Veda. Means they have found some remains, written sources, and in which they could find the conversation between the Vishwamitra and the river, two rivers. All right, let us see that.
That were worshipped as goddesses. Vishwamitra, O rivers, come down from the mountains like two swift horses, like two shining cows that lick their calves. You move like chariots to the sea through the power of Indra. You are full of water and wish to unite with one another. The rivers, we who are full of water, move along the path the gods have made for us. Once we start flowing, we cannot be stopped. Why do you pray to us, O sage? Vishwamitra, O sisters, please listen to me. The singer who has come from a distance with his chariots and carts, let your waters not rise above our axles so that we can cross safely. The rivers, we will listen to your prayers so that you can cross safely. Historians deduced that this hymn was composed in the area where these rivers flow and that the sage lived in a society where horses and cows were valued animals as the rivers were compared to them. Rivers like Indus, Saraswati, Ganga, and Yamuna are also named in other hymns. Cattle, horses, and chariots. The Rig Veda has many prayers for cattle, children, and horses. Battles were fought for cattle, land, and water. Wealth that was obtained was distributed among people and used for performance of yajnas or sacrifices.
Yes, that I have explained you in the video in this part 2. This is what were there. Means people used to have battle and they used to conquer such way, and they used to fought battle for the cattle, land, and water, and whatever wealth they were obtaining, it was distributed among the people for the performance of yajnas or sacrifices. All right.
Sacrifices were performed by offering ghee, grain, and animals which were meant for gods and goddesses into the fire. People met and discussed matters of war in assemblies. Words to describe people. People are described in the terms of work they do, the language they speak, the place they belong to, and their cultural practices. The priests, who were also called Brahmins, performed various rituals, while Rajas is a name given to another group of people. Jana and Vish are two words used to describe the people or a community as a whole. The Aryas were people who composed hymns, and Dasas and Dasis was a name given to slaves.
In this way, the first video was covered totally the topics given in the textbook. Now let us watch the another video. In this, we will be able to understand about the silent sentinels, the story of megaliths, the burials at Inamgaon, as well as the social differences at the burials, the occupations at Inamgaon. Watch it carefully.
Sentinels, the story of the megaliths. Big stone boulders known as megaliths were arranged in a circle or as a single stand-alone stone on the surface or underground to mark the burial sites, a practice that began about 3000 years ago in Deccan, South India and Kashmir. There were a couple of actions people carried out to make megaliths. These were transporting stones, breaking boulders, finding suitable stones, shaping stones, digging pits in the earth, placing stones in position, and finally burying the dead. The dead were buried along with distinctive pots called black and red ware, tools, weapons of iron, skeletons of horses, and ornaments of stone and gold. Finding out about social differences. Articles found with the skeleton of the dead by the archaeologists were not same for every dead body. Some dead bodies were buried with gold beads, stone beads, and copper bangles, while others were buried only with a few pots, which suggest there was a difference of status amongst people. Some were rich, while some were poor.
Understand? In this way, these were the differences. Even archaeologists have found out. Okay, they have found out. That's why we can study. Means we can learn. They have studied and we are learning. All right, this one.
Were some burial spots meant for certain families? Often, megaliths were found to have more than one skeleton, indicating that the site belonged to the same family. These bodies may not have been buried at the same time, and stone boulders could have probably served as signposts for that particular burial site. A special burial
This
at
is the location you
Inamgaon.
can see on the map.
Inamgaon is a place on the river Gor,
Your goal.
a tributary of Bhima, and was occupied about 3,600 and 2,700 years ago. The dead were buried in the ground, laid out straight, and the head pointing towards north. Burials were within the house, with food and water placed with the dead. One person was buried in a large four-legged clay jar in the courtyard and was placed in cross-legged position. What skeletal studies tell us? It is difficult to determine the sex of a skeleton, as there are no major differences between the skeleton of a man and a woman. If jewelry is found with skeleton, it is assumed that the skeleton is that of a woman, but it is not confirmatory, as men also wear jewelry. Sex of a skeleton can be better determined from the bone structure, as the hip bone of women is larger. A renowned physician named Charaka wrote a book on medicine known as Charaka Samhita about 2000 years ago, which states that human body has 360 bones, which is larger as compared to 200 bones recognized by modern anatomy. Occupations at Inamgaon. Archaeologists have found
So you got the idea about the skeletons. How did the archaeologists have studied the skeletons? After death, skeleton we cannot differentiate which is of men and which is of women. All right. Though that's why in Charak Samhita it is mentioned that human body had 306 bones, and basically the humans hip. Because of that only they could understand this is of the skeleton of man or this is of women. Now let us move ahead with the occupations at Inamgaon.
seeds of wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas, and sesame, and also bones of cattle, buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, pig, sambar, deer, black buck, antelope, hare, crocodile, fish, etc., showing that all these were used as food. Evidence of fruits such as bear, amla, jamun is also available. Elsewhere, first evidence of writings in China is found.
So we have learned about the occupations and all other things of the Inamgaon. Now let us see what else was happening, elsewhere. What was happening here? Let us move.
To be about 3,500 years old. These writings were on animal bones which were called oracle bones and were used to predict future. Questions were written on the bones like, would the kings win battle? Would the harvest be good? And then these bones were put into fire and they cracked because of heat. The fortune tellers predicted the future by studying these cracks, but sometimes made mistakes. The kings lived in palaces located in cities, and they gathered large quantities of wealth, which included decorated bronze vessels.